Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Titiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Titiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Titiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So I hope that everybody's keeping well wherever it might be. And I've come down here to Dhamma-Vinaya Monastery for the Patimokkha. So this is Uposatha Day. And was asked a question a couple of weeks back, I think, about pain, practicing with pain. And the question was basically, how does one practice not me and not mine if there's this kind of chronic pain in the body? And that person practices, said they do practice when they're calm, but then sometimes the whole body gets hijacked and the mind just kind of melts. So one of the things is, like practicing with pain, it's very easy to read explanations about practicing with pain and very difficult to do it actually. So we rely on our bodies to a large extent to practice meditation, not just in the sense that one is doing body contemplation, but one relies on the health of one's body just to be able to walk back and forth in Shakmana, just be able to, or walking meditation, just be able to sit in meditation in various ways, even in a chair, requires a certain amount of health in the body. So these are ways of practice, these are formal modes of practice that are very conducive to practicing. If one's body is racked with pain and one does lying meditation and one can't even lie on one's right side or left side, one has to lie on one's back, it becomes very easy to fall asleep. So one has to take up the practice of practicing with pain. It's best to do it when one is healthy, before one gets chronically injured. Because one then gains this strength of mind, one becomes used to practicing in the face of pain. So remember, as a young man going on these retreats, if going on these kind of meditation retreats, one sometimes has to face quite a lot of pain, especially if one is new to meditation. And I remember thinking I was so tough before I went to meditate. And I go on this meditation retreat, and there would be these very old ladies sitting just still, and I was just racked with pain. I could barely manage it. It's kind of the worst one on this retreat, my very first meditation retreat. And was practicing this way, and kind of the teacher was it was kind of like the dunce in the class. The teacher was, okay, well, try to do this and try to do that. And I'd be meditating, and then it was kind of collapse, this kind of terrible pain in my knees. And I was young at that time, in my 20s, but just hadn't dealt with pain properly. And I remember the pain just kept escalating and escalating, but I made this determination, I think, not to sit in a chair. And I also made a determination to sit with the meditation leg that was worse. That was, one usually has a meditation leg that's easy to sit with, a meditation leg that's hard to sit with. Anyways, the fourth day came around, or it was a 5-day retreat, I think it was the very second last day, and then suddenly all the pain disappeared. And where it went, I don't know. It was kind of just going through, and I was even able to go with they have these students then, and they were doing these prostrations. I think they were doing like 300 or something. Anyways, it took about an hour of these kind of bows. And I was even able to join them for this kind of bowing thing, and then stay up even late into the night on I think it was the last night before the retreat ended. So a lot of what happens in the way that we deal with pain is actually mental to a certain extent. Not all of it, but it can be the case that our pain in our body is exacerbated by the way that we look at it, the way we react to it, and the way that we compound it. This kind of second arrow. So there are these kind of miraculous things that happen when one keeps on practicing, and it seems like the pain will never go away, and it goes away. It just disappears into nowhere. So one of the best things that one can do is, if one's body is healthy, to try to go on some group retreats when one is first starting out meditating, because this kind of group energy will push one to do that, and to have these kind of, you just can't kind of get up, you can't leave. And so this is the most conducive container for having these experiences where one is forced to face pain, and one is sitting there with all these other people who are facing it too. Kind of thunderclap to accentuate the point. So that's an excellent way to learn about how much pain one can really tolerate and where one's limits are, because one's limits are often much further than one thinks. However, there's another side to pain, which is that it's possible to push oneself too far and get injured. So kind of lots of other stories of that. At that same monastery, I decided to sit in full lotus all the time. I thought I'd fast track it. I wanted to be able to sit in full lotus. By the way, most meditators who are used to sitting in chairs from a Western culture, and they try to learn to sit in full lotus, a lot of them get these really bad injuries to their knees or their back. So it's best to do a lot of yoga first if one wants to do that. In any event, I decided I really wanted to sit in full lotus, and I was just pushing through the pain. And then one day I went to pick up this very heavy computer monitor, and boing, my back went out. So that is pushing oneself too far and pushing oneself unwisely in the face of pain. And when one has a number of these different injuries like this, then it can lead to a kind of chronic pain, like a kind of chronic difficulty. And that can be an obstacle to one's practice. If one is already in a situation where there's this chronic pain, chronic difficulty, usually that pain goes, the situation goes away and it comes back, goes away and it comes back, goes away and it comes back. So when it's there, one should try to learn to develop in such a way that one can try to take the pain and the emotions associated with the pain as one's meditation object. Kind of watch where they come from, watch how they arise, and learn to separate them out from the mind itself. So there's a very good description of this in this practice in Longta Mahabua's book. So I'll plan to put a link at the bottom of this video for those who want to look more into that. But it's good to look at both the physical pain in the body and the emotions, because the thing is, when one gets into these kind of situations with chronic pain or whatever it might be, then actually it's not just the pain that's affecting one's body, one's ability to navigate in the world is affected at the same time. So at the same time one has this physical pain, one's reputation starts to, not reputation, but you could say reputation actually, one's reputation starts to fall away because one can't do the things that one used to do. Actually, this is how it is in human life. This is how it is being a human. There's certain things that other humans like, and one should be able to do them in order to get their favor, in order to get their praise. It's this way everywhere. And if you can't do your profession, if you can't walk well, if you can't sit up straight well, then naturally people's respect for you, we can say respect for you will diminish. And if it's in a culture like a Western culture where there isn't a reverence for elders, there isn't a reverence for the wisdom of old people, there's basically just a reverence for the practical ability to get things done, then that's when you might say, for lack of a better word, reputation. Kind of reputation can fall away. A sense of who you are can fall away. And the emotions that are associated with that can be quite difficult, because all of a sudden now you're in physical pain, and you don't have people's respect, or not just respect, like their liking. They may not even want to hang around with you much, or your or your friends who you used to hang around with might not come around so much. So one can reflect appropriately on this and take both the emotions that come up around this pain and the physical sensations themselves as an object of meditation. Learn to watch that emotion and see what it is that causes it to arise, how it remains, and how it falls away. And what is the thought that occurs before it arises? And what's that thought based on? In this way, we can learn to see the difficulties that one builds up through the creation of a sense of self. Creating a sense of self is an activity that one does. And one goes through the day attaching to things that one likes. One attaches to one's career or however it is that people treat you, whatever one's status is in human society. And then one is faced with chronic pain. One is faced with the inability to do the things that led to that status, and one's status falls away. And also one's ability to use one's body falls away. So it can be a very difficult and trying situation. In this case, one's emotional fortitude can be challenged, and this is one of the reasons why one's kind of efforts can just melt away when one is faced with this kind of crippling pain. It's not just an attack in terms of the body, it's an attack in terms of the mind. The second arrow is not just the pain of the body, it's often the projections into the future. What's going to happen to me in the future? It's often the changes, slight, gradual, but true changes over time in the way that people treat one because one is no longer able to do the things that one could do before. So when one traces these things back and watches where these emotions come from, they often come from a self that one has created through the course of one's life by attaching to things that one likes. And this is the result. This is the flip side of it. Where there's gain, there's loss. Where there's pleasure, there's pain. Where there's praise, there's blame. Where there's status, there's loss of status. This is the flip side that one is experiencing of the things that one liked. But one has to see that in one's own mind. One has to see the way that it operates to develop dispassion for the feeling itself, for the emotion itself, to develop dispassion for the bodily feeling itself. When we say these things are attached to things that we like, that one likes, what's really important is that this chronic pain sometimes comes and goes away. When it goes away, usually one forgets. One will go back to practicing normally, but when it goes away, one has to re-watch where it is that this kind of sense of attachment comes back in. Because pretty soon after the pain goes away, one can start to build up this sense of self again. Again, one's future will seem bright. Okay, I can do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this in the future, I can do this and this and this. And that is the creation of the sense of self that led to this pain in the first place. When one's body starts to feel better, my body's better, you start liking the body again. It's kind of, not everything is painful to touch. All of a sudden, the body is this useful tool. But when these kind of painful feelings subside, when these happy feelings come, that is upadana. One's mind is launching out into the body. One's mind is launching out into these emotions and mixing together with them, so that it's almost like the body and these emotions become part of who one is. So it's really important is not just to practice this way, separating the mind in times of pain, but in times when the pain has gone away, and it's at that time when one feels elated, one also has to create this separation. I was thinking of this phrase recently that, sometimes you lose something and get it back. And the phrase that I was thinking of is, when you get something back that you lost, you should develop dispassion towards it. Usually somebody's so elated when they get something they lost, but it got lost, it can get lost again. And it's at this time when we feel elated that the real potential for pain sets in, when we're happy, when we're in a state of pleasure. So having cultivated, you might say, these kind of sanya topics, these perception topics, where one learns to separate the mind, separate one's identity from the pain, separate one's identity from the emotions. This is the cultivation, to a certain extent, of the perception of not self. One is no longer seeing these emotions, the body, as oneself, because one is learning to separate what really belongs to one. The body doesn't belong to one. It's when one is in these states of pain that one can do this. And as we mentioned, when the state of pain goes, one can watch to see how the mind launches out and separate it. This is one of the ways that one can practice to finding a solution to this pain, because it's the separation that removes this second arrow. It's because the mind is mixed in with these feelings that when the pain comes, one feels the physical pain and the mental pain. Physical pain being the first arrow, mental pain being the second arrow. So one wants to cultivate for this separation. But also one wants to learn, when one's body is feeling good, to cultivate to try to cultivate states of calm. Try to learn to use breath meditation. Try to learn to use metta meditation to make the mind calm, to make it peaceful and to make it relaxed. Because This kind of relaxation or this calm gives fortitude, it gives strength, and it gives power to the practice of learning to separate the mind. So these things together, this kind of learning to cultivate the sannyas that lead to the separation of the mind from the body, of the mind from emotions when one is in pain, when one is out of pain, and learning to calm the mind when the mind feels good. Thinking, right now I feel good, but this could go away. I'd better use this opportunity as best I can. When these things come together, one can practice to separate one's mind from the things that cause one to suffer, which is the same thing as the things that one likes. And in this way, one can learn to extract that second arrow. One will still feel the first. One will still feel the physical pain, but more and more one can detach oneself from the mental pain. And in some cases, like on this retreat, the mental pain can be, a lot of the pain that one experiences can be mental. It can just dissolve in ways that are really, really unusual when one succeeds in practicing meditation in this way. So those are a few thoughts on dealing with chronic pain and cultivating the perception of not self, and wishing everybody all the blessings of Dhamma practice.